Dawn breaks over the Amazon rainforest, golden light filtering through layers of mist. This is nature's greatest pharmacy, where countless healing secrets have been passed down through generations. Here, in this sacred space between earth and sky, our story begins. In a small clearing, where medicinal plants grow in careful rows, a young girl watches her grandmother's hands move with practiced grace. This is Maya Rodriguez, age 7, and she doesn't know it yet, but she's witnessing more than just the preparation of traditional medicine. She's seeing the beginning of her own destiny. Her grandmother, Elena, rhythmically crushes leaves in a wooden mortar, the sound mixing with morning birdsong. "You see, little Maya," she says, "every plant tells us its story, if we learn to listen carefully enough. This one," she holds up a leaf streaked with purple veins, "it shows us its purpose in its pattern. The way these lines spread like our own blood vessels, that's no accident." Maya leans closer, dark eyes wide with wonder. Her grandmother has always said that understanding comes first through the heart, then through the mind. Years later, these words would echo through laboratories and research halls, shaping a journey that would bridge two worlds. But for now, she's just a little girl, watching, learning, absorbing the wisdom that flows as freely as the nearby river. Her grandmother's garden is a living library, each plant a book waiting to be read, each preparation a story waiting to be told. The morning light catches the steam rising from Elena's medicinal tea, creating halos of golden mist that mirror the forest's own awakening. 20 years later, in a modern laboratory at the University of São Paulo, that same golden light streams through windows, illuminating Dr. Maya Rodriguez as she peers through a microscope. The young girl from the rainforest garden has grown into one of Brazil's most promising ethnobotanists. But today, she's not just examining plant cells, she's chasing a memory. Spread beside her microscope lies her grandmother's journal, its pages worn soft with age and use. Elena passed away 5 years ago, leaving behind this precious record of her knowledge. But it's more than just a collection of remedies. Hidden within these pages is a code Maya has only recently begun to understand. The journal's margins are filled with intricate symbols, patterns that Elena drew beside each plant description. For years, Maya thought they were simply decorative, her grandmother's artistic way of organizing her thoughts. But last week, something extraordinary happened. Under the microscope, examining the cellular structure of a plant her grandmother used for healing respiratory infections, Maya saw it, the exact same pattern from the journal, written in the plant's very cells. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maya's voice carries the same gentle strength her grandmother's did. But then I started checking other plants from her journal. The patterns match. Somehow, without modern technology, my grandmother had understood something fundamental about these plants' molecular structures. She saw it in their growth patterns, in the way they responded to different conditions. She couldn't express it in scientific terms, but she knew, the discovery sends ripples through the scientific community. Here was evidence that traditional knowledge, often dismissed as superstition, contained sophisticated understanding of plant biology. But for Maya, it's more than scientific validation, it's a bridge between worlds she has always strived to connect. In her university office, Maya spreads out the journal pages, now carefully preserved between sheets of archival plastic. "Look at this," she points to a particularly intricate symbol beside a plant used for heart conditions. When we examine this plant's effect on cardiac tissue, the cellular response creates almost exactly this pattern. My grandmother couldn't see individual cells, but she understood how the plant interacted with the body. She read the story written in its leaves, its flowers, its growth patterns, but understanding the code is just the beginning. Maya knows that throughout the Amazon, traditional healers hold similar knowledge, passed down through generations. Knowledge that could be lost as elderly healers pass away and younger generations move to cities. It's a race against time, but now she has a new tool. Her grandmother's code is a bridge between traditional wisdom and modern science. We follow Maya as she establishes a groundbreaking research program. Young indigenous students work alongside university researchers, each group learning from the other. In the laboratory, traditional knowledge guides the research, helping scientists identify promising medicinal compounds more quickly than conventional methods. In the field, scientific understanding helps traditional healers optimize their preparations and preserve endangered plant species. Among these students is Maria Fernandez, a shy 16-year-old from a remote village. Like Maya at that age, she stands between two worlds, traditional knowledge from her community and the promise of modern education. When I first came here, Maria says, adjusting her lab coat, I was afraid I didn't belong. But Dr. Rodriguez showed me how my grandmother's knowledge is just as valuable as anything in these textbooks. Now I understand, we're not choosing between tradition and science. We're bringing them together, making both stronger. The program grows, attracting attention and support. But success brings its own challenges. Pharmaceutical companies begin showing interest in their discoveries, raising difficult questions about intellectual property rights and who benefits from traditional knowledge. Maya remembers her grandmother's words, "Knowledge is like water, it should flow freely to nourish everyone." She works tirelessly to establish ethical guidelines ensuring that indigenous communities retain rights to their traditional knowledge and share in any benefits from scientific developments. It's complex, challenging work, but Maya approaches it with her grandmother's patience and wisdom. In the laboratory, breakthroughs begin to multiply. The team discovers that many traditional plant combinations work synergistically. Compounds that are ineffective alone become powerful medicine when combined, just as traditional healers have long known. Maya's code helps reveal why, showing how cellular patterns interact and enhance each other. One particular discovery stands out. A plant combination used traditionally for treating resistant infections reveals a novel mechanism of action that could help address antibiotic resistance. The pattern in Elena's journal perfectly predicted this interaction, though she documented it decades before antibiotic resistance became a global concern. My grandmother couldn't have known about antibiotic resistance as we understand it today, Maya explains, but she understood that sometimes infections become stronger, harder to treat. She observed how these plants working together could overcome what single plants couldn't. The pattern she drew shows exactly how these compounds break down bacterial defenses, allowing others to work more effectively. The discovery makes headlines, but Maya ensures the story emphasizes its origins in traditional knowledge. This isn't about validating traditional medicine through science, she insists. It's about recognizing that there are different ways of knowing, different ways of understanding the natural world. When we bring these understanding together with respect and openness, we all benefit. Back in the university garden, now transformed into a living laboratory of traditional medicinal plants, Maya walks with a new group of students. The morning light filters through leaves just as it did in her grandmother's garden. Every plant here has a story, she tells them, echoing Elena's words. But more than that, every plant is part of a larger story, the story of humanity's relationship with nature, of knowledge passed down through generations, of different cultures finding ways to understand and work with the natural world. She stops beside a plant her grandmother particularly loved, its leaves dancing in the breeze. This one, she says, was traditionally used to treat grief. Science shows us it contains compounds that affect neurotransmitters linked to depression. But you know what's remarkable? The traditional healers didn't just use it as medicine, they would plant it near homes, believing its presence alone brought comfort. Now we're discovering that this plant releases aromatic compounds that can indeed help reduce anxiety just by being nearby. Different ways of knowing, leading to the same truth. The students gather around, some from indigenous communities, others from cities, each bringing their own perspective. Maya watches them share observations, traditional knowledge mixing with scientific terminology, and sees her grandmother's dream taking root in a new generation. In her office later, Maya opens her grandmother's journal to a page she returns to often. The margin shows a spiral pattern, one Elena drew repeatedly beside different plants. At first, I thought this was just a way she organized related plants, Maya explains. But now we understand it shows how these compounds interact with cellular communication networks. The same pattern appears in everything from the way neurons fire to how plant chemical defenses spread. It's a pattern fundamental to life itself. She runs her fingers over the faded ink. My grandmother used to say that all healing comes from remembering our connection, to nature, to each other, to the wisdom of those who came before us. Science is now showing us just how deep those connections go, right down to the molecular level. 3 years into the program, the results speak for themselves. The team has identified numerous promising compounds, developed new sustainable harvesting methods, and most importantly, created a model for bringing traditional and scientific knowledge together in ways that respect and benefit both. But perhaps the most significant impact isn't in the laboratory at all. In communities throughout the Amazon, young people are taking renewed interest in traditional knowledge. They see how Maya's work bridges worlds they thought were separate, showing them they don't have to choose between tradition and modernity. Maria, now confident and skilled in both laboratory techniques and traditional medicine, works with younger students. Dr. Rodriguez taught me that knowledge isn't about power, it's about responsibility, she says. Every discovery we make honors those who preserved this wisdom through generations. Every student we teach carries that legacy forward. In a surprising development, the program begins attracting international attention. Scientists from around the world come to learn their methodology, seeing applications for working with traditional knowledge in their own regions. Maya's grandmother's code becomes a template for understanding traditional medicine systems from Africa to Asia. What we're really doing, Maya explains to a group of visiting researchers, is learning to read nature's language in multiple ways. Traditional healers read it through generations of careful observation and experience. Scientists read it through microscopes and chemical analysis. When we bring these readings together, the story becomes clearer, fuller, richer. The sun sets over the university garden, painting the sky in colors that remind Maya of mornings in her grandmother's garden. Student researchers gather their notes, carefully tend to plants, prepare to head home. But a few linger, asking questions, sharing stories, building bridges between worlds just as Maya has done. She watches them with quiet satisfaction, remembering the little girl who once watched her grandmother with similar curiosity. The journey from that garden to this one has been long, but the core truth remains the same: healing comes through connection, through bringing together different ways of knowing and understanding. In her office, Maya adds her own notes to her grandmother's journal, continuing the legacy in her own way. Her symbols combine scientific notation with Elena's intuitive patterns, creating something new yet anchored in tradition. Every discovery we make, she writes, is built on the foundation of those who came before us. Our task is not just to advance knowledge, but to preserve and honor the wisdom that brought us here. As night falls, Maya makes one final round of the garden. The plants cast long shadows in the fading light, their shapes echoing the patterns in Elena's journal. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to bridge worlds. But for now, in the gentle evening air, she feels her grandmother's presence in every leaf, every flower, every pattern of growth reaching toward the sky. "You were right, grandmother," she whispers to the garden. "Everything is connected. We just have to learn to see the patterns, to read the story that nature is always telling us." Above her, the first stars appear, their ancient light reaching across time and space, just as knowledge reaches across generations, cultures, and ways of understanding. The legacy of one wise woman's garden has grown into something far beyond its original borders, yet its essence remains the same: the understanding that true healing comes from honoring our connections, to nature, to knowledge, to each other. And in that understanding lies hope for the future, as bright and enduring as the stars themselves. As we leave Maya in her garden, new students are already preparing to arrive tomorrow, each bringing their own stories, their own ways of knowing. The journey that began in a small rainforest clearing continues, growing, evolving, yet always rooted in the wisdom of those who learned to read nature's patterns and shared that knowledge with generations to come. This is not just Maya's story, or Elena's story, or even the story of traditional medicine finding validation in modern science. It's the story of human knowledge itself, how it grows, adapts, and flourishes when we learn to see wisdom in all its forms. The true gift within is not just the healing properties of plants, but our capacity to learn from each other, to bridge divides, to see patterns that connect us all. And so the legacy grows, like a seed taking root, reaching both deep into the wisdom of the past and up toward the promise of tomorrow. In gardens and laboratories around the world, new chapters are being written, new connections made, new understanding gained. All because one little girl watched her grandmother's hands move among the healing plants, and learned to see the patterns that would one day help bridge worlds.